You ever have that moment when you look back at a relationship, friendship, romantic, even family, and think, how did I not see it sooner? Yeah, me too. I used to believe that if I just loved harder, understood more, or gave them one more chance, things would change. But here's the thing, toxic relationships don't get better with more effort. They get worse with more tolerance. I learned that the hard way. And if you're nodding right now, maybe you did too. But what if we could stop this cycle before it drains us? What if we could recognize the red flags, set boundaries, and stop mistaking control for love, guilt for loyalty, and chaos for passion? First, toxic people don't always look toxic at first. They're charming, they mirror your values, and they make you feel seen until they don't. One of the hardest things to accept is that the people who hurt us the most are often the ones who felt the safest in the beginning. That's what makes toxic relationships so difficult to spot. If someone walked up to you on day one and said, hey, just so you know, I'm going to manipulate you, make you question your own worth, and drain the life out of you, you'd never stick around. But that's not how it works. It's slow, subtle, and deceptive. Psychologists call this love bombing, an intense, overwhelming phase where someone showers you with attention, validation, and what feels like deep connection. It's not just a romantic thing. It happens in friendships, workplaces, even family dynamics. In research on narcissistic abuse, studies show that this early idealization phase is what keeps people hooked. Because once someone makes you feel special, the human brain wants to keep that feeling at all costs. So what happens? You start to trust them. You open up. And here's the tricky part. They don't just learn about you. They learn how to use what they know about you. If you value kindness, they make you believe they're the kindest person you've ever met. If you've been hurt before, they promise they're different. They mirror your dreams, your insecurities, your fears until they feel indispensable. Then, slowly, things shift. And not in a dramatic, obvious way, but in a way that makes you question yourself first, not them. They start making small, cutting comments disguised as jokes or constructive feedback. They dismiss your feelings with, you're too sensitive, you're overthinking this. And the same person who once made you feel safe now makes you feel unsure. That's the moment when most people feel stuck, because the confusion kicks in. But they were so kind. Maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe I just need to be more patient. And before you know it, you're making excuses for behavior you once swore you'd never tolerate. Research in emotional abuse shows that this is one of the most damaging aspects of toxic relationships, not just the behavior itself, but the self-doubt it creates. When someone plays both the comforter and the cause of your pain, your brain struggles to separate love from control. You think, they hurt me, but they also make me feel better. They're the problem, but they're also the solution. And that is the cycle that keeps people trapped. I used to think that recognizing toxic people was about looking for big, obvious red flags. But now I know the real red flags are the ones you explain away. If you find yourself constantly justifying someone's behavior, rewording their insults to make them sound less harsh, or feeling the need to convince yourself that they're still the good person you first met, that's your sign. Not everyone who's charming, kind, and engaging has bad intentions, but the ones who do, they know how to use those traits as weapons. And the hardest lesson I learned was this: it doesn't matter how good someone was at the start. It matters how they treat you in the long run, because real love, whether from a partner, a friend, or family, doesn't confuse, belittle, or exhaust you. It holds space for you to be fully, unapologetically yourself. Second, your gut is not overreacting. We're wired for connection, but we're also wired for survival. If your body tightens, your energy drains, and your mind second guesses itself, that's not being too sensitive. That's your nervous system throwing up a red flag. One of the biggest myths we've been taught, especially those of us who were raised to be nice, to be understanding, to always assume the best, is that doubt means we're being unfair, that questioning someone's behavior makes us the problem. But here's what I've learned the hard way. Your body often knows the truth long before your mind is willing to accept it. I've talked to so many people, strong, smart, self-aware people, who have stayed in toxic relationships far longer than they should have. And when I ask them what they felt early on before things got bad, I hear the same thing over and over again. Something felt off. I couldn't explain it, but I felt uneasy. I had this pit in my stomach, this tension in my chest, but I ignored it because I didn't have proof. We're taught to trust words over feelings, to believe what people say about themselves instead of what our bodies are telling us about them. But neuroscience shows that our nervous system picks up on danger before our rational brain does. It's why you can walk into a room and feel tension before anyone says a word. It's why a certain person's presence can make you feel small even if they're smiling. And yet we override that instinct all the time. Maybe I'm just anxious. Maybe I need to give them more time. Maybe I'm being dramatic. But let's flip that for a second. If you were walking alone at night and suddenly felt unsafe, your heart races, your body tenses, would you stop and think, I should wait for proof before I react? No. You'd listen to that feeling and protect yourself. But in relationships, we hesitate. We wait for something big, something undeniable, and by the time we get it, we're already deep in the cycle of self-doubt and exhaustion. Toxic people benefit from our hesitation. They want us to second-guess ourselves because the more we do, the more power they have. They push a boundary, and when we react, they say, that's not what I meant. You're misinterpreting things. And we think, maybe they're right. But here's the truth. If someone constantly makes you feel like you're overreacting, it's because they need you to doubt yourself so they don't have to be accountable. And let me be clear, not every uneasy feeling means a person is toxic. But if you consistently feel drained, unsure, or like you have to shrink yourself to make things work, pay attention. A healthy relationship doesn't require you to silence your own instincts. The lesson I learned too late, you don't need permission to trust yourself. You don't need someone else to validate your discomfort for it to be real. If your body is telling you something's wrong, listen. Because the sooner you do, the less time you'll spend untangling yourself from a relationship that was never safe to begin with. Third, apologies without change are just manipulation. We've all heard it, I'll do better. I didn't mean it, you know I love you, but without action, those words are just empty currency. And staying in a toxic cycle, waiting for real change will cost you your peace. I used to think an apology meant something, that if someone looked me in the eyes and said, I'm sorry, it was a turning point, a moment of awareness, a step toward change. But what I've learned, what I wish I had learned sooner, is that an apology without real change is just a way to reset the cycle. It's not a commitment to growth. It's a tactic to keep you from leaving. Studies on behavioral patterns in toxic relationships show that repeated apologies without change behavior actually reinforce manipulation. It creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, a pattern where sometimes things are good, sometimes they're bad. And because of that unpredictability, people get stuck. The brain clings to the moments of kindness, the temporary apologies, because it wants to believe things will get better. And toxic people, they know this. They know that when they push you too far, when you're on the edge of leaving, when you're exhausted and ready to walk away, all they have to do is pull out an apology. Maybe they cry. Maybe they admit they were wrong, say all the things you've been waiting to hear. Maybe for a brief moment, they make you believe that they finally get it. But then nothing changes. The same behaviors creep back in, the same dismissive comments, the same broken promises, the same excuses. And when you bring it up, you hear, but I said I was sorry. Why can't you let it go? So you start questioning yourself. Am I holding a grudge? Am I expecting too much? And before you know it, you're stuck in a cycle of forgiving the same things over and over again. Here's what I've learned. Remorse without responsibility is just manipulation. A real apology comes with change behavior. It comes with accountability. It comes with action that proves I don't just feel bad, I'm willing to do the work to make sure I never hurt you this way again. Anything less than that, that's not an apology. That's emotional bait. And here's the hard part, because I know someone's thinking it right now, but what if they really do mean it? What if this time they actually want to change? Look, I believe in growth. I believe people can change, but I also believe that it's not your job to wait around for someone to become the person they promised they'd be. Change is hard. And if someone is serious about it, they will prove it with consistency, not just words. The biggest lesson I learned too late: forgiveness is a gift you can give, but trust is something people have to earn back. And if they're not willing to put in the work, then you're not obligated to keep giving them another chance, because real love, real healthy, honest love doesn't just apologize. It grows. It does better. And it never makes you feel like you're asking for too much just by expecting respect. Fourth, setting boundaries will make the wrong people angry, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. The people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will call you selfish when you finally have them, but healthy relationships respect limits. Toxic ones test them. For the longest time, I thought boundaries were about controlling other people's behavior. Like if I set a boundary, it was my way of making someone treat me better. But what I've learned through research, experience, and a whole lot of trial and error is that boundaries aren't about controlling them. They're about protecting you. Here's how it usually goes. You start to realize that something in a relationship isn't working. Maybe you feel drained, disrespected, or like you're always the one compromising. So you decide to set a boundary. Maybe you tell a friend, hey, I can't always be available at the last minute. Or you tell a partner, I need to be spoken to with respect, even when we disagree. Or you let a family member know, I won't engage in conversations where I'm being criticized. And then here it comes, the pushback. Wow, you've changed. Why are you being so dramatic? You're really making a big deal out of nothing. And suddenly you feel guilty. You wonder if you were too harsh, if maybe you should have phrased it differently, if maybe keeping the peace is better than standing your ground. This is where most people get stuck, because when we set a boundary, we expect relief. But what we often get first is resistance. Here's why. Healthy people respect boundaries. Unhealthy people see them as a threat. A person who truly values you will hear your boundary, and even if they don't love it, they'll respect it. They might need time to adjust, but they won't try to make you feel guilty for protecting your own well-being. But someone who's been benefiting from your lack of boundaries, they will fight against them. They will guilt trip you, call you selfish, or accuse you of not caring. Because to them, your boundaries feel like inconvenience, not self-respect. Research on boundary setting shows that people who struggle with them often come from environments where they were taught that love is about sacrifice, that being good means always being available, always saying yes, always putting others first. But here's what I wish someone had told me sooner. Self-sacrifice is not the foundation of love. It's the foundation of resentment. And that's what happens when we don't hold our boundaries. We start feeling drained, irritated, disconnected. We say yes when we mean no. We make excuses for behavior that hurts us. And we end up abandoning ourselves just to keep other people comfortable. The hardest part, boundaries will reveal who actually respects you. And sometimes that's painful, because when you finally say, I won't tolerate this anymore, some people will walk away, but that's not a loss. That's clarity. The lesson I learned too late: if someone gets angry at you for setting a boundary, that's confirmation that you needed it in the first place. Boundaries don't ruin healthy relationships. They expose the ones that were never healthy to begin with. And the people who truly care about you, they won't leave because you finally started valuing yourself. They'll stay because they already did. Fifth, healing doesn't mean you never miss them. It means you no longer betray yourself to keep them. People think healing from a toxic relationship means reaching a point where you feel nothing. No longing, no nostalgia, no second guessing. But healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming yourself from it. One of the hardest parts of walking away from a toxic relationship is that, for a while, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like grief. And that grief is confusing because it doesn't just hurt. It makes you wonder if leaving was the right choice in the first place. You remember the good moments, the times they made you laugh, the way they held you when you were hurting, the apologies that felt so real in the moment. And your mind does this thing. It starts minimizing the bad. It whispers, was it really that bad? Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I gave up too soon. This is where so many people get pulled back in. Because we don't just grieve the person, we grieve the hope we held on to, the hope that maybe with enough patience, with enough love, things could have changed. That's what makes toxic relationships so hard to escape. We're not just leaving someone, we're letting go of the future we imagine with them. But here's what I've learned about healing. It's not about never missing them. It's about trusting yourself enough not to go back. Studies on trauma bonding show that the cycle of hurt and comfort in toxic relationships actually wires our brain to crave the very person who caused our pain. It's why you can logically know someone is bad for you, but still feel drawn to them. Your brain isn't longing for them. It's longing for the relief they used to provide after they hurt you. That's the cycle. They cause the pain, then they soothe it, and eventually you start believing they're the only person who can soothe it. Breaking that cycle isn't easy. It's messy. It's lonely. But it's also how you get your power back. The real marker of healing isn't indifference. It's self-loyalty. It's reaching a point where even if you miss them, even if you wonder what could have been, you refuse to abandon yourself just to keep them. It's knowing that the version of love you had to beg for was never real love. That the peace you feel now, even if it's quiet, even if it's unfamiliar, is worth more than the highs and lows that left you drained. Healing doesn't mean you forget what happened. It means you remember and you choose yourself anyway. Walking away from a toxic relationship isn't just about leaving another person. It's about coming back to yourself. It's about learning to trust your instincts, hold your boundaries, and believe that you are worthy of love. That doesn't require you to shrink, endure, or explain why you deserve to be treated with respect. Healing is not a straight path. There will be days when you feel strong and days when you question everything. But every time you choose yourself, every time you listen to that voice inside you that says, I deserve better, you are breaking a cycle. You are rewriting the story. So if you're in that space right now, wondering if you're overreacting, if you're asking for too much, if it's even worth leaving, hear me when I say this. You are not crazy. You are not too much. And you are not alone. The love you deserve will never require you to betray yourself to keep it. And when you finally step into that truth, you'll realize that walking away wasn't the hardest part. Staying gone is. In healing, that's where your power is born. Good luck, and more than anything, trust yourself. You've got this.